middle school is where these conversations really need to start happening. And so Dana shared that she wished when she was in middle school, she knew that bodies came in all shapes and sizes. She wished that she knew that all bodies were good bodies, that she knew that in puberty, you need to gain weight before and during puberty in order to have a healthy body. She wished she knew that children should not be on diets. She wished she knew that the BMI calculator was created in 1830 by a scientist and was designed to track um, body mass index for white males. She wished that her middle school provided her with this information. She wished that she knew that she didn't need to have a scale, that eating disorders are dangerous. And even though she didn't have the opportunity to know those things when she was dealing with her eating disorder in middle school and high school, this is our opportunity to share this information with as many students as possible so that they won't have to not know these things as well. Dana described herself as hitting puberty early. She said that by the time she was 13 years old, she was 5'1", which is the height she was today. And when she went to the doctor, her mom was told that she needed to change Dana's eating, that it was a problem, that she was intuitively eating, just eating what she wanted, when she wanted, listening to her body when she thought it was full, when it was hungry. Um, and that by stopping eating intuitively, which is what children do most of the time, she started to not trust her body when it told her it was full, and not trust her body when it told her that she was hungry. And that kind of was the epicenter and or the catalyst for her disordered eating, which led to her eating disorder. And it felt like paralysis. It felt like she was frozen, constantly thinking about food, constantly thinking about her body. It became a life thief, and it took years away from her. And it took many, many, many years for her to recover and to feel fine with food. Um, and so she needed a lot of help. I think when she was in eighth grade, she fainted when she was at school. Her friends found her, went and found an adult. The adults at the school contacted her parents, and she needed to go inpatient for a special unit for eating disorders. And then, after getting inpatient care, she stepped down to partial hospitalization, then intensive outpatient, and then did outpatient psychiatry and worked with a dietitian for many, many, many years until she became pregnant with her daughter. And she didn't know she was having a daughter at the time, but she found out that she was pregnant. And that was the moment that she realized that she can't keep doing this anymore. So it's been a process and a journey, but everybody's story starts somewhere, and it usually starts with their relationship with food. And I think that's why it's so important for us to come together and talk about these things openly, publicly, and in a safe way so that a lot of the misconceptions that Dana and I grew up with, you are not falling victim to that as well.
Yeah. I know that like today it eating disorders are talked about sometimes, but we can always like there's sometimes misinformation and myths that are going around, right? And it's really important that we get all the correct facts. So next, I think that we have some myths that we'd like to debunk. so that everyone can get some accurate information.
I do think that there are times and ways in which people try to get attention that may not be, the healthiest way, but this is not that. This is not an example of that. I think that there are definitely easier ways to get someone's attention than to develop an eating disorder. It's a horrible thing to live with. Um, I wouldn't wish that on anyone at all. The next myth is people choose to have an eating disorder. I think that this kind of marries or hugs the first myth a little bit, but just like when we talk about anything, let's say alcohol, for example, consuming alcohol is a choice. Having an addiction, that's not a choice, right? Eating disorders are very genetic and biological in nature. There are also sociological factors at play with the onset of eating disorders. But if there is a family history of disordered eating or eating disorders, then there's a higher likelihood that you can develop one. So there is definitely a genetic and biological link. The next myth is people with eating disorders are very thin.
That's definitely not true because, um, I mean, in general, our body types are just so different, right? And you don't have to be like, there are varying degrees of eating disorders as well.
Yep.
So it's unscientific in a way to categorize this disorder by saying that you have to be thin in order to have um, an eating disorder, which is just completely not true. You can be at any stage of like any stage of body weight, any stage of disorder. You're um, like it doesn't matter what you look like from the outside or anything. It's just what matters more is your personal relationship with food. And I think that's it's
Yes.
really important to have that distinction between like the physiological possible physiological symptoms, but it's more so about the mentality and um, its
So,
position as a
Alan,
mental
what do you
state.
think? Do eating disorders only affect women and girls?
No, not at all. It can happen to anybody because something it's not something that only a certain category of people can have.
Exactly. Eating disorders don't discriminate. Socioeconomic status, gender, body shape, body size, uh, age, like it doesn't discriminate. 1 in 3 males are it's like a ratio of 1 to 3 men to women. Uh, but that's also a little bit skewed because men are just less likely to seek treatment than females. So I think that definitely plays a role in the data there. Transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse youth report higher rates of eating disorder symptoms than cisgender youth. So I think that's important to note. And also, men, boys, and gender diverse individuals may experience more barriers to accessing support for eating disorders. And they might even be less likely to be diagnosed with an eating disorder. So, all of those things skew the data a little bit, but basically, I think it's really, really important to know that it doesn't discriminate. And I want to talk about the 4 most common types of eating disorders. But what I don't want to do is spend too much time on this because that is not our primary takeaway from today. Our first type of eating disorder is anorexia nervosa. That is the technical name for it, but it is most commonly known by just anorexia. And this mental illness is characterized by behaviors that interfere with maintaining adequate weight. Um, Bulimia nervosa, or bulimia, is characterized by periods of food restriction followed by binge eating with recurrent compensating behaviors such as purging or other compensatory behaviors like fasting or compulsive exercise. Then we have binge eating disorder, which can seriously affect psychological and physical health. And it's characterized by recurrent episodes of eating large quantities of food, followed by intense shame, distress, or guilt afterwards. But that's also kind of silly because most people experience large um, or immense shame, distress, and guilt after any disordered eating episode. And then lastly, ARFID, which is the acronym for Avoidant and Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. This involves limiting the amount or type of food consumed. And unlike anorexia, this does not have anything to do with distress about body shape, body size, fear of gaining weight. Instead, this is a sensory based disorder where people have a preference or an aversion to certain qualities of food like textures, smells, and colors. And this pervasive pickiness leads to inadequate nutrition.
Mhm. It's
But like I said, that's not really what I want us to focus on today.
And Dr. McGee, if I could just jump in quickly and say if anybody's having a hard time seeing the presentation, you can just click on the presentation to zoom in, or you can click on any one of the speakers to zoom in, and then, click outside of that to zoom back out. Thanks.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. So sorry. I just wanted to say that I know that we've been referring to um like eating disorders in general as EDs or like disorders, but is there a difference between eating disorders and disordered eating? Like, are they the same things? Can we use them interchangeably?
That is a really good question. And that is the number one takeaway I want everybody to walk out of here with is knowing the difference between an eating disorder and a disordered eating. Um, because the truth is that disordered eating leads to eating disorders. Let's start with eating disorders. They are problems that affect a person's eating behaviors, their attitude about food, and the way that they see themselves, the way that they see their bodies. And it really impacts their mental health, but it can cause serious harm to their physical health as well. Eating disorders are treatable illnesses. They are treated with psychiatrist, psychiatric care, medical care, in addition to your primary um, care doctor. You'll probably be working with a dietitian, and then mental health support as well. So, all three: medical, psychiatric, and mental health. And then these disorders can be serious, can be chronic, sometimes life threatening if not recognized and treated appropriately. When it becomes life threatening, that's when somebody would need inpatient care, like Dana did. But then there's disordered eating. Disordered eating is this umbrella term for when someone has one or more disordered beliefs or behaviors, but they don't exactly match all of the criteria for this clinically and medically um, relevant diagnosis. So the only person that can make a diagnosis of an eating disorder is a clinical or medical professional. but you don't have to have met all the criteria for any one disorder in order to be engaging in disordered eating. The other thing I think is really important to know is that you can definitely have more than one um, type of eating disorder at the same time. So you can be engaging in a multitude of disordered eating behaviors. I previously spoke with another now therapist, formerly struggled with eating disorders as a late teen, and she was a dancer, so it was kind of always around her world. Um, and she said that it was kind of like a pendulum where the more that she restricted, the more that she would tilt back that pendulum, the more that she would tell herself no or what she can and cannot do and put herself in a box, the harder it became to follow through with those expectations. And then at a certain point, you kind of let go of that pendulum once you reach your threshold. And then that pendulum swings all the way to the other extreme, which is why when we have restriction, we can then see binging behaviors. And so the more you force yourself into one extreme, the greater likelihood you will then experience the other extreme as well. So,
Yeah.
disordered eating can look like eating less or avoiding certain types of foods, rigid patterns around foods, um, like where you eat foods in a certain order, for example, eating more than normal, eating when you're not hungry, eating your feelings, eating to fill a void, eating to not feel empty inside, right? Um, Developmental changes like puberty or change in activity level, eating alone or eating in secret, intense and ritualistic exercise habits, or finding yourself socially withdrawn um, during food related things. So, not going out to eat with your friends, not wanting to join the table at Thanksgiving, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we recognize like all the different types of eating disorders or disordered eating, because I feel like right now there's kind of a like a general connotation where it's centered around just eating less to
Yeah.
preserve body image. But I think that it's really important that we realize that there's many different facets to like disordered eating and eating disorders, because it's not always and like that brings I'm going to bring up the myth from earlier that we debunked,
Hmm.
that everyone who has eating disorders are women or girls or have to be skinny.
Right.
We should definitely stray away from that, because there's many other people out there who are suffering
Well, men
from these
can
patterns.
totally, bodybuilders,
Hmm.
athletes, especially sports where there are certain weight classes. In
Hmm.
wrestling, there's a lot of unhealthy eating habits with wrestling, gymnastics, dance. Um, yeah, all sorts of stuff. So, as I mentioned before, there's a genetic predisposition towards specific traits, such as, you know, addiction, alcoholism, perfectionism. So family history is going to play a huge role in the predisposition and or the development of an eating disorder. We typically pick up disordered eating habits from our family of origin and the people that we associate ourselves with. So, people who have family members who have experienced an eating disorder may be at a greater risk of developing an eating disorder themselves because they have witnessed disordered eating. I think that one thing people don't realize is that 50% of all your adult body weight you gain during puberty. And that we can't grow in height if we don't grow in weight. Weight gain is necessary in puberty. And so I think that there's not enough detailed information that is disclosed about puberty, and the way that it impacts your body shape, your body size, the amount of calories you need, all that kind of stuff. And instead of viewing food as good and bad, healthy, unhealthy, or who's heard junk food, right? But when I think junk, I think trash. I don't eat garbage, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with french fries. There's nothing wrong with ice cream. There's nothing wrong with brownies. There's nothing wrong with chips. That are all those are examples of what people would say is junk food. But it's not about what we eat, right? We don't always need to eat for nutritional content. Sometimes we can eat to enjoy the experience. Like for my birthday, my kids and I went out for ice cream. There was nothing nutritional about it, but it was fun, right? It's a celebration. And
Yeah.
how did we experience food? Um, we had a lovely, nurturing, bonding experience around it.
I think that kind of goes I think that kind of goes back to the relationship with food thing, right?
Yes,
Because it's really how your mind like perceives it, and instead of having all of these like stereotypes or societal expectations of, oh, only eating healthy and this many calories and stuff like that, I think that kind of instills a sense of like if I'm not fitting into this mold with regards to what I'm eating or how I'm eating it, then that just leads to the shame and the emotions that lead to like
yes.
disordered eating, right?
Which is why I don't like saying junk food or unhealthy choices, because if we tell ourselves that certain things are bad or that we should avoid it or only allow a certain amount, and give that like connotation of you're dancing with fire type of thing, then and we start engaging in restrictive behaviors. Oh, I'm only allowed a little bit of that. Then that's how we can fall victim to binging, right? And then there's the notion of moderation. But who's to say what's an appropriate enough amount?
Right. It's arbitrary.
It is. It's what we're inundated with, right? It's not just the messages that we're receiving, but it's all the things that we see as well.
Yeah. And to jump off of that, I think like a really big contributor to, well, you have it pulled up, but a really big contributor to like unrealistic images and like unhealthy habits, I guess I'm going to throw that under the umbrella of
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy, but like perhaps messages that promote disordered eating comes from social media. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Social media is gross, right? All of the stuff that we see, all of these messages that we're receiving of what beauty and healthy is supposed to look like, um, just make everything so confusing, because while they are promoting healthy bodies and a healthy lifestyle, they're getting airbrushed, right?
Mhm.
And gosh, at the like Men's Health magazine or like People magazine, you'll see towards the back of the magazine, they'll highlight one celebrity and say, this
Mhm.
is what I eat in a day,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
shaming people who eat differently than that, who have a different lifestyle than that,
Hmm.
for whatever reason. You know, not everybody has a chef that can make delicious
Yeah.
organic meals, and a personal trainer that works with them multiple hours a day on a daily basis. And it's just not real. It's not realistic. So, research on social media is just clear across the board that its use is associated with increased body image concerns, increased in disordered eating, and therefore eating disorders, decrease in self-esteem and body image. I mean, just the data is astounding. And so it
Yeah.
does. I mean, there's definitely things that we can do, like removing apps from our phone, especially ones that make you feel bad about what you look like or who you are. Putting limits on your social media use, unfollowing certain people that aren't making you feel great about yourself. Um, or following accounts or people that aren't focused on appearance. Um, and but really, it impacts body image. It's the thoughts and the feelings that we have about our body,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and the way one person feels about it fluctuates at different
Mhm.
stages and ages and times of our life. It's influenced by our personality, by our environment, by our culture and our family. But really, it boils down to the way you see your body. Um, it's not, and the way you see yourself, the way that you perceive yourself. It's feelings of not associating value or worth to the shape and the size of you,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
way you think about your body is your cognitive body image, and it can lead to what we think about. If
Mhm.
we have a positive image of ourselves, then we're not going to be preoccupied with our weight and our food.
Yeah.
But our behaviors, the choices that we make, kind of back to our myths slide that we were at a while back, um, those choices result in your body image, your behavioral body image. So when a person is dissatisfied with the way that they look, they might isolate themselves. They might employ unhealthy behaviors as a means to change their appearance. But positive body image is associated with higher self-esteem, higher self-acceptance, and having a general healthier outlook on life with more balance.
Yeah. Um, I think that that's really good advice, and especially one thing that's really helped me is like it's not always like a linear path, right? Um and I have to keep on reminding myself that it's normal to have like up and downs about how I'm feeling about myself, but keeping like that kind of open mind is really important, especially since like sometimes these you get these messages when other people are talking about it, even subconsciously. Like for example, on social media and even in person, you know, summer's coming up. Sometimes you'll see ads or
Mhm.
messages that are like, "Oh, here's my here's like how much I eat in a day in order to tone down for the summer, and messages like that. And it may seem harmless, but those things can really affect how like I view myself. And it's inevitable that we'll run into like these messages, right?
Yeah,
But I think just remembering like all of these facts and these things about disordered eating, and how just remembering the importance of just trying to accept yourself for the way that you are. As cliche as it sounds, I think it's really true, because
for
changing the
sure.
perspective and just trying not to get sucked into that like unattainable void, I think is really what helped um, me with my journey of trying to,
I just
get
Yeah.
want
out
to
of.
jump in real quick. Those great points, Ellen. And I just want to remind people that if you have any questions, and Kyrie, if you want to do another poll question, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them up in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're coming up against time. And then before we end, we're going to keep going with a couple more. But if anybody would like to meet Dr. Magida or Ellen and Kyrie after this, just feel free to stay on, Dr. Magida, if you're okay with that. And you can
Yeah,
walk up.
absolutely.
Maybe you can come to the center, Dr. Magida, and anybody who wants to come up, you can unseat yourself with the fourth icon there and just use your arrow keys to move over and come up and talk to Dr. Magida if you have any questions for her. I just want to let you know you'll have the opportunity to do that. Thank you for allowing me to interrupt.
No, of course. And if anybody happens to be in the state of Illinois and wants to work with a member of my team at Therapy, etc., you can reach out to us at therapy-etc.com. I'll put that in the chat. You can check out our website, and you can call our main number to get more information about how we can help with um, therapy services and medication management or psychiatric care. I think one thing I wanted to mention is that it's okay to not love every single part of your body. I don't love my stretch marks, right? I don't love the scar I have from hip surgery, but there are parts of me that I do love, right? I love how thick my hair is. I've always been very fortunate to have very thick hair. I don't love that I need to wear glasses, but I do love my eyes. Um, and I didn't used to love the fact that I'm 5'2", but now I've come to embrace that I am vertically challenged, as I put it, and I am 5'2". So I just kind of leaned into it. But there's a chance that you might still be growing. I'm done. Yeah. So I think that it's important to know that we we just need to accept our bodies for what they are, with our strengths and our limitations, and all of that makes us beautiful.
Kyrie, can you share what the results are of the poll? Dr. Magida, what do you? Yeah, that's what I was going to ask Dr. Magida. What do you think, if that surprises you or if that's pretty
No,
typical?
that doesn't surprise me, especially with the diet culture that we have. Um, it's this system of beliefs and ideas which equate thinness with health, telling us that a person's value is tied to their body size, and that's just wrong. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for giving me the space and the platform to speak with all of you and to share all of this information. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that anyone may have. But I also wanted to say the National Eating Disorder website, nationaleatingdisorders.org, is a great place for you to go for additional information and resources on eating disorders. I'm also going to put that national.
Just want to add too that I think this is our 5th or 6th episode of Unfiltered Emotions. So if you haven't already seen them, check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Dr. Megiddo has covered everything from anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, bullying. The next episode is going to be LGBTQ topics. So please find those on Interview or reach out if you don't see those, and Ellen will make sure we put those back on Interview.
Yeah, and if you have any topics that you're interested in learning more about, please reach out to us as well.
Absolutely. And Kyrie, if you want to put that in the chat. And then for those of you who came in a little bit later or who haven't created an avatar yet, if you want to experience that before this is over, if you want to walk up on stage or meet any of our speakers, you can unseat yourself with the 4th icon at the bottom. And again, hit the C key. And on the C, you'll have a screen to create your avatar. And make sure you hit human, and then you can whatever clothes you'd like or whatever you'd like to do, and then use your arrow keys to move around. And feel free to go up on stage if you have any questions. You could also turn your camera on. You don't have to. And that's the 3rd icon at the bottom. And feel free to play around. I'm going to play around with one of mine.
I'll be on for about 3 minutes. So if anybody has any questions that they'd like to speak to me about, just let me know. Thank you.